Good afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome you to our class this afternoon. This is a class on early and ancient music, the year 1300 to about 1500, just about the time of Reformation, maybe a little bit beyond. And I just wanted to welcome everyone, first of all. And second of all, I wanted to introduce our group. This is the Jefferson City Consort group. We play once a week for an hour and a half in rehearsal. We've been doing this since about 2014 or so. Some have joined us a little bit later. Actually, our kind of founder was Richard Parsons. And Richard is living in St. Louis area. They thought maybe they may try to get here today, but Charlotte, the wife, has just had surgery not too long ago, so I guess they probably weren't able to do that. But anyway, here we are, the Jefferson City Consort Group. Our leader is Warren Alt. Warren, he's a, yay, Warren! Warren plays tenor recorder, as do I. This is what a tenor recorder looks like. Sitting next to me, where I will be, is Cecil Calkins. Cecil is a dual player. He plays alto and bass recorder. Warren, show him what that bass looks like. Yeah, it's a big one. Okay, then we have another alto player, Carmen Brown. Carmen's an alto, but sometimes she plays tenor as well. You just never know about us recorder people. And then we've got two soprano people in Joy Cassabaum and Mary Kadiri. And there they are. They play usually usually the melody line. And for those of you who are familiar with choral music, basically it's the soprano, alto, tenor, bass configuration. So Warren's going to explain a lot of this. You don't need me up here yakking. So I think what we're going to do is turn it over to Warren, and we'll begin our program. Oh, there will be a break, by the way, and Becky will wave. My Becky Buckles will wave when it's time to take the break, and then we'll get back to it. Warren Alt, here he is. Hello.
We're actually starting way before Steve thinks. We're starting at the beginning of Christianity. Today's talk is basically about how you go from the beginnings of a small sect in what's now Israel until you get to basically the Beatles, or at least the things that let you have the Beatles.
Just leave it out. They can see the screen well enough. I think with the lights on, we're going to need lights. Oh, yeah, just turn them back on, Beck. I think we'll just leave them on. That's pretty bright. Yeah. Go ahead, Warren. I'm sorry.
All right. Let's, first of all, find my notes. Yeah, lots. There we go. So we have Christian chant, which was original. It was a means of worship. It was deliberately not what the Jews were doing. They were rejecting that and going off their own way. Chant spread very quickly throughout as Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, even though it was actually illegal, at least up until Constantine, who decided to make it legal at the Edict of Milan. And by 350 BC, AD, thank you, we have something called the Schola Cantorum set up, which is a school for singing that was set up in Rome so that people would learn chant. So here we have Gregory, who was getting set up, or who allegedly created plain chant. Plain chant, plain song, or Gregorian chant. They're all the same thing. Supposedly Gregory sat, and a bird sat on his shoulder and dictated the chant to him. And then, I got a pointer. This guy here's the bird, here's Gregory, and this guy is writing down as Gregory dictates. For those of you who've heard the origin story of the Mormons, it's similar in some ways. So at this point, let's find out what plain chant sounds like. And for that, we have Cecil.
Yes, Warren will probably explain to you the significance of this chant, which is Ut Queant Laxus. Ut Queant Laxis resonare fibris mira gestorum famuli tuorum solve polluti lapireatum Sancte Johannes.
A commemoration of St. John the Baptist.
Was it only Latin?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, only Latin.
Could we hold the questions, folks, till the end? Thank you.
Is plain chant one voice always?
Yes, more or less. Yeah, it's one line.
Because Gregorian chant is multiple voices, I think.
That comes, well, Gregorian chant actually was plain chant, is one line. Later on, we'll have polyphony, more than one line.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll get there. Okay, plain chant was not exactly uniform. So Europe's a big place, and there were different kinds of plain chant. In France, you had Galician chant. Don't ask me to tell you the difference between these, I don't know, but they exist. In Italy, you had two groups, Ambrosian chant in the northern half, Beneventan chant in the southern half. Over in Spain, you have two kinds, the Mozarabic and the Visigothic. Remember, Visigoths wound up in Spain, and so did the Arabs. And finally, in England, you have Sarum chant, which Sarum is actually the old name for Salisbury. So there's a bunch of flavors of this. It isn't a uniform thing at this point as it spread. So skip it forward from, we're going to have a lot of skipping forward. Skip forward from about the year 1 to about 800. Charlemagne, seen here, is crowned Holy Roman Emperor. And there was a deal made that Rome would recognize him as the Holy Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Emperor, ruler of basically everything. And they would give him authority because, well, they get to do that. Meanwhile, he would agree to protect the Pope and see that the Pope stayed in power. It was an arrangement that worked pretty well. And all these regional variations that you have across Europe threatened that power, the supremacy of Rome. Rome wanted to be able to say, do it this way. And the people in the various parts are saying, eh. So, how do we legitimize that? You make up the bird story. Gregory had absolutely nothing to do with Gregorian chant. He was long gone by the time we got around to that. This is actually Leo III, so Gregory is 400, 500. Okay. So plain chant is basically monophonic. Wrong button. Plain chant is monophonic. You have one line of stuff, no accompaniment, no harmony, just La, 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 no split lines. If you have people who have different voice ranges, you might sing in octaves, but it's parallel. When you get intervals, it's called organal. And then you're singing in parallel fifths, which I will not attempt to do. But they started doing that long before Charlemagne winds up in power. They also went for like fourths. Both of those are considered perfect intervals because of the way they sound. So we have basically parallel lines of stuff. It's not somebody singing do, re, mi, fa, sol, and someone singing re, mi, fa, sol. They don't do that. They sing together and follow along. Now, this, believe it or not, is what you get when you're, as a way of recording it or writing it down. You get the words, Alleluia, Domine, I can't read most of this. And these little squiggles, that's the melody. That's what you're supposed to sing. It was kind of useless if you didn't know the song to start with. So. These are what the various things are supposed to tell you. It's the shape of the melody, basically. That it should go along and go up and down here, or it should go down here, or stay the same. But it doesn't really tell you what the melody is. You lose the actual absolute pitch. So it's really only useful if you already know the tune. There we go. Somebody, Huckaball, got the bright idea that what we should do is we should put lines on here, and then we'll put the words in the shape of the melody. Domine. Hopefully that will help somewhat. Not a lot. It wasn't a popular enough thing that we do this anymore. Now if we back up a ways, we have Boethius, who's a 6th century Roman who was also a music theorist, and he's the guy who gave us the original note names. There's no J in the Latin alphabet, but the lowest note's A, goes up, what is it, 15 of them? So roughly 2 octaves, 3 octaves, because 2 octaves. And what happened later is that they expanded that and they simplified it, got rid of a bunch of letters, and so who did that? Anyway, we went from Boethian notation to now I'm drawing a blank on whose notation that is. Anyway, writing from A to G, and then it repeats. And we write the next octave in lowercase, and then write the next octave with double letters. Now we have 3 octaves and we only have 7 symbols. This helps. And A are the same note, just an octave apart. And now we add one more, which is the lowest note that you can sing, gamma. It's an arbitrary note, it's just the low note. A is a whole step above that, and that's it. Okay. So enter Guido. This is something. This arrangement of letters predates Guido. Guido of Arezzo, which is in Italy. He lived somewhere between about 990 and 1033. So roughly the start of the 11th century. He was a Benedictine monk in Italy, and he was a music theorist, and he was also a choir teacher, and he had a problem. He's teaching people in a monastery, they have to learn the repertoire, which is, remember that monks get up in the middle of the night and they sing some stuff, then they sing some more and some more, like 5 times a day. There's the regular repertoire of stuff you have to sing, and then you have all the things that go on over the year that you have to learn, because on this day, the saint is commemorated, so we sing these things, and somebody's having a wedding, so we sing these things. Huge repertoire. And the way you have to learn it, remember that we wrote it down and we had those squiggles. Basically, it was all learned by ear. You had to teach it and you had to memorize it. So Guido thought there ought to be a better way and worked on developing tools. That was interesting. There we go. Guido developed something called hexachords. In other words, 6 notes that go together. And the notes he chose were the first notes of each phrase of the hymn that Cecil sang. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. And eventually C, because Santa Johannes. But the first note in the hymn is ut. Do comes later. So that's where that comes from. Julie Andrews owes her career to Guido. So the pitches have an important relationship. In the music, from here to here is a whole step, from here to here is a whole step, from here to here is a half step. So it's whole, whole, half, actually. There we go. That's the names. And that's the pitch relationships. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Okay? Great. Except remember we had like 15 notes or 3 octaves, depending on whose naming system you had. We need to relate the letters to this, to the hexachords. So we take our letter system and we mark in where the half steps are. Those of you that have pianos know that there's no black key between B and C or between E and F. Same here, right? So we can then create hexachords. That's a hexachord starting on G, whole step, half step, whole step, same here. And you can get some more out of this, but it got really cluttered fast. Still not a lot of help. So, sorry the letters change, but you start down here at ut, low G. You have 6 notes, whole step, half, whole step, right? And the same's here, and here, and here. So, we have to have a way of going from here to either here or here. Notice that we have hard and soft. He defined 3 hexachords for everything. You put another one up here. Natural is where you just have C, all the letters, everything's fine. Hard, you have all the letters that you normally would have, but if you do that starting at F, you wind up hitting a snag here. If this was a B, that would be a whole step, and there's the half step up there, it's in the wrong place. So what he did is basically introduced the flat, which actually, if you're German, is H. No help there. So the singer's job then was you would sing, and you'd sing within this hexachord, but then if you need to go up higher, you would realize that you're here and you're going up here somewhere. Well, you switch hexachords. And your job as a singer is to know, for instance, if you need a hard or a soft, but you're just moving between them. The process of going from one to the next is called mutation. And that's a teaching method that he came up with to help people get a reference. You know that if you're singing in here, going from here to here is whole, half, right? And so you can teach people more quickly how to do this. The name of a note, proper name, this one for instance, you have an A here, you have an A here, and an A here, lots of A's. This one was called A Ray. So if somebody tells you A Ray, you know it's going to be in that hexachord. This one is F Fa U. All run together as one word. They actually called it that. And this one, when you get up here, if you want, this is A La Mi Re. Yes. This is the basis, by the way, of what's used for teaching now, solfege. Okay. Now, obviously, that chart is a problem if you're trying to lead a choir of people. So this is Guido's infamous hand. You will actually find references to it. It was a big deal. It's a teaching method. So you start here at the thumb. That's gamma oud, A Ray, B Mi, C, D, E, F. Go around. You laugh, but it's actually was used to teach choir. You could, with your hand, indicate what you wanted people to sing. And accomplished choir teachers could do it with one hand, the other hand, and sing at the same time. 3 lines at once. So I can have one chorus over here following this hand, another chorus over here following the other hand, and I can sing the 3rd line. No, I can't. And I'll sing if I can help. Now, if you recall, we had squiggles that really didn't tell you a whole lot, except the kind of shape. But they really don't tell you the pitch relationship between any 2 notes. So, this is music. That's a baseline pitch, and this is some stuff above it. We're going to go down, and we'll have a squiggle here. Okay? I have no idea what the pitch is. The same, sorry this is out of focus, but oh well. This is actually the same piece of music down here. Guido introduced, instead of 1 line, 4. And which one's which? I don't remember which one's which. Anyway, there's a blue one, a red one, a black one, and a yellow one. The red one or the yellow one is C, the other one's F. Doesn't matter. But it puts in, these 2 are going to be a 4th part, 5th part. This is the 3rd here. So you actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's F. F. We'll get there. Anyway, you know that this note and this note and this note and this note and this note are all the same, as opposed to, I don't know what others are the same. Okay.
What notes are those? Happy notes.
I guess. There we go. Okay. There's our first milestone. We actually now have a way of writing down pitch. Modern music depends on pitch. I might depend on actually being able to tell what note people intend me to play. It only took 1,000 years to get us that far. All right. Okay, you're asking about polyphony. We've, up to this point, been singing one line. Well, except Guido had 2 choruses occasionally. But there was the Notre Dame School of Music. It was attached to the cathedral. Somewhere between the end of the 12th, beginning of the 13th century, the teacher there was a guy named Leonin. And he came up with the idea of something called organum duplum. You take plain song, and you stick another line on the top of it. So you have the psalm you're supposed to be singing, and then we add some ornaments to it. And we'll add more, don't worry. All right. So the other thing that the Notre Dame school did was, if you're going to have more than one line, you can't have someone kind of singing at one speed and somebody else singing at a completely different speed. You want them to go together somehow. So they came up with rhythmic modes, and they just divided up into long things, short, long. Those of you that do poetry, they fit in with that. Iambic pentameter is the same meter. And for those who can read music, that's the modern notation for it. The actual older notation, they had a thing that was a long note and a short note. Longa in Latin and breve. Okay, so this is what it sounds like then when they go completely nuts and put 4 lines together. This is Paradin, who, it's diminutive Peter, who wrote a 4-line piece. The actual melody is on the bottom. Oh, that was interesting. Slides again. That, by the way, was, it says, a mass for Christmas Day. They got, the guy singing the bottom line had one word. Everybody had one word. The guy singing the bottom line had one note for all that. Okay, that's 4 lines. used to doing this with pages and notes like this. Another of the Notre Dame school was Michaud, who came later and was creating musical labyrinths. So the same idea as a corn maze, or having a labyrinth that you walk through as a metaphor for doing a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. So they did that musically. And since I'm being told to move along. And again, we really have one word through all of that. We're not, plain chant, we have, the words are pretty obvious, they follow along with the notes. Here you have one note, or one word, one syllable actually, and a few minutes later you get the next one. The words kind of get lost in all of this. Very lost. What? There we go. So what happened was, who is this guy? Pope John the 22nd issued something called the Docta Sanctorum Patrum, which, no, it means something. I don't speak Latin. Anyway, he was one of the Avignon.
Teaching of the Holy Fathers.
Thank you. My Latin translator. He was one of the Avignon popes. Normally the popes were in Rome. He was in Avignon. Actually, someone came and took over briefly in Rome. It was a mess. Anyway, he issued a papal bull saying, "These composers, knowing nothing of the true foundations upon which they must build, are ignorant of the church modes, incapable of distinguishing between them, and cause great confusion. The great numbers of notes in their compositions conceals from us the plain chant melody with its simple, well-regulated rising and falling, etc., etc." And then he goes on and talks about how this is sensual and licentious. Stop it. Don't do that. Well, he wrote that in 1324. Michaud was writing in 1360, so nobody paid any attention to it. But there were people who objected to the notion that you'd have newer stuff. Okay, so we got our second milestone now. We can write a melody and have it follow along. We also can now write rhythm. Yay. It only took us 200 years. We're just moving right along. There's still another piece though. The church had managed to insert itself into music at least a little bit, all of this. They basically said intervals that are acceptable are fourths, fifths, octaves, and unison. So if you sing the same note, it's cool, octave apart, and then the fourth and the fifth, these are good. Don't use any other ones. And so if you look back at my show, and I encourage you actually, if you want, I'll supply the YouTube videos. They're singing in fourths and fifths. It's one of the things that makes it characteristically sound like it does. What we want though, is we want to put in that extra note. The thing that makes a chord a chord, that one. And it turns out when you do that, you wind up with major, minor, minor, because of the structure of that. But what this gives you is a pull. The parallel fourths, parallel fifths, they just kind of go along and they don't do much. If you have the third in there and you go from major and minor, you actually wind up with momentum. This is modern theory, but basically if you start on one chord, C, say, you can go to any chord you want. But once you get to one of these other chords, say you went to the third, it tends to want to go either to the sixth or the fourth. It doesn't like really going to the fifth. It doesn't mean you can't write music that goes to the fifth. There's no rule that says you can't, but the way it wants to pull you is that way. So the guy who figured out that this is actually a thing is a guy named John Dunstable, who, oh come on, here we have some stuff about John. We don't know much about him. We know that he was probably from Bedfordshire. We know that he worked for the Duke of Bedfordshire, probably. We also know he was probably in France because his boss was in France, being the regent and the governor in Normandy, because this was the 100 Years' War. Dunstable died in 1453. And what he's credited with is something called the English continents. The notion that instead of just having the intervals of fourths and fifths, he put the thirds in and the sixths in. And that was unique. That's something that wasn't being done until he came along. One of the things that he wrote is something called O Rosabella. This is the English translation. The original is an Italian balletta poem, basically, by Giustiniani. I don't speak Italian either. So, believe it or not, we're going to play something. See, we eventually got here. All right. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Meanwhile, John was in England. We have a guy named William Dufay, who was a contemporary of his, who worked for the Duke of Burgundy. Burgundy was an important northern French port. Also, they make some nice wine. And the Burgundian Flemish thing was an important power broker in Europe. Anyway, Dufay took Dunstable's notion of the English continents, putting that third in, and just went completely nuts with it, and wrote a courtly love ballad called Si la fille si pale, which he wrote in 1430. He then turned around and turned the middle voice of this into a mass for Duke of Savoy's wedding. The things that are important about this piece are that it has an identifiable melody. You can actually find it. Chords that are actually harmonious, they fit together, and phrases that have a cadence arc, an arc and an actual cadence, a place where everything comes to rest. So you start somewhere, go somewhere, and then you end up somewhere. And also the rhythm and the words go together. I guess I should take these with me. All right, so we can hear each other. One, two, three, one, two, three. Okay, so there's our three pieces that we needed to get us from a small sect in the middle of nowhere to modern music. A way to write it down, a way to record rhythm and harmony. And it only took us 1,450 years to do it. Fast. But now that we've gotten to this point, some things changed. Seriously changed. First of all, some guy named Gutenberg, who came up with a way of doing movable type. It wasn't a thing that he invented, but he actually made it work. So that's 1450. And sheet music is something that we actually then get because of that. A book was written 25 years later after Gutenberg worked it out and printed called Roman Urichan, and it was a book of plain song. So, and then by 1520 we have printed songbooks that kind of democratized music. Now you can go into a store and buy yourself whatever your favorite artist is. And this actually was significant for musicians as well, because people like, well, Dufay and Dunstable were working for nobility because that's what you did. Bach worked for a city, several cities. Mozart really wanted to get a job with a duke. Handel finally gave up on it, and actually his primary source of income was sheet music, writing all those oratorios so that people could go sing them at home. So that's one big change. Another one is that Constantinople fell. That kind of marks the end of the Middle Ages for a couple of reasons. One, because that was the end of the old Roman Empire. It's now gone. It's now an Ottoman Empire. Hagia Sophia becomes, instead of a church, it's a mosque now. Very pretty one, but still. The other thing is that it was brought down by gunpowder, which kind of means that the whole knights and chivalry, it's over now. And then the real biggie, Martin Luther. Remember him? Here he is, putting his theses on the door. He would have, well, he kicks off the Reformation, but he also results in a whole lot of changes to music. So we move on to the Renaissance. Yeah, it's a Ren Fair. It actually isn't something that started all at once. Everybody did not wake up on a Tuesday morning and go, oh, we have to wear funny clothes and, I don't know, whatever it is you do at Renaissance fairs. There was not a unified timetable. Italy was an important center, but they were importing Franco-Flemish musicians and English musicians. So it's happening all over, but not uniformly. So one of the things that is a result of the Reformation was that people kind of acted weird. So they acted differently, I guess. We have Joseph Perez, who is a Burgundian, who wound up moving and working in Ferrara for this guy, which is Hercules the First of the House of Este. And Hercules basically had a job for Dupre. Dupre only worked for him for a couple of years, but he gave him a job that he wanted a mass written to commemorate a friend of his, Guillermo. Guillermo was a Puritan, you can call him that. He was a zealot in Florence, and what he did was basically told everybody, stop doing this newfangled stuff. You need to go back and be pious and religious, and don't do vain things like paint yourself and have mirrors. This music's got to go. Books with thoughts in them I disapprove of. He actually wound up running Florence and running the Medicis out, which was a good trick. And he had his own little army to guard him and make sure. He arranged for Shrove Tuesdays, about 1495, that they'd have bonfires. And you would bring your vanities. Bonfire of the Vanities. It's not just a book by Tom Wolfe. But actual bonfires. And if you didn't bring your stuff to burn, someone would help you. They helped you put it in. They were serious about this. Well, that worked well for a couple of years, but 1497, he went pretty much too far. He was denouncing the church and saying, hey, Pope, you're doing it wrong. That did not go over well with Pope Alexander VI, who excommunicated him, had him arrested, had him tortured, and then executed. So, all for heresy and sedition. And then after that, told everybody, you have 4 days to turn over anything that this guy has written, or I'm going to excommunicate you too. Apparently, he really made him mad. Well, while he was in prison, being tortured and awaiting execution, he wrote a study based on, or a prayer actually, called Inflexo Ego, which was an apology to God for having given up his convictions under torture and saying, I'm sorry I lied, I still believe what I said before, but they made me do it. Well, that psalm, his study wound up becoming very important, and it actually influenced Erasmus and Martin Luther. So apparently the Pope's attempt at making him go away did not happen. So, here is a little bit of what Dupre did with that in order to make the Inflexo Ego into something. And remember that having any of this guy's writing was illegal, but he, at the same time, his boss wanted to commemorate his friend's death. He was mourning. So we have something where the words are up front, we know they're there. This is really a political piece, and this is not the whole thing. It goes on for quite a while. Basically, he drops the counterpoint and goes to block chords. Chord, 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 to go with the words, to make sure you understand them. Very pretty, it's worth listening to the thing. All right. He also wrote other things. He wrote secular songs, motets, songs with words. And this one is not that. Mille regrets. I'll let you decide what the words mean. I think it may actually be one of those courtly love songs. In old French, and then the translation, if you want to sing along. Now 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
folks have about a 10-minute break, so would this be a good time?
Sure.
Okay. About 10 minutes, be back around 2:40. Oh, bathrooms are back here.
And we're back. That worked well. You know him. Before the Reformation, church music was basically done by priests and the choir. The congregation's job was basically to do calisthenics and tithe. That was pretty much their job, except for one time of year, and that was Christmas. It was a big exception. The first book of Christmas carols shows up somewhere in the early part of the 16th century by a guy named Wynkyn de Worde, who was one of Caxton's apprentices, Caxton being a famous printer. In Northern Europe, they were getting the idea that you should sing things at Christmas time from Italian sacred songs, things called lauda, lauding, and also canciones, songs. And they were designed so that everybody could sing, normal people. Also, they started with the model mangers about that time. You know, the thing we put in front of every building now, well, in about a month. They actually did it to lure shepherds in, apparently. I can't confirm that, but I have read that. So, where did they get these songs from? Well, dancing songs. Chorus, Corolla, circle singing songs, singing dances, from which we get the word carol. But we also got songs from the pagan traditions that were hanging around. Not everybody was a Christian. And so we have holly and ivy. Holly was a masculine thing, ivy feminine. And when the Christian monks got hold of it and decided to help the pagans never, ever, ever take somebody's holidays or traditions away, reinterpret them in terms of your own religion. Jesus and Mary. So, here we have the Christmas carol. One, two, three, one, two.
What's that called today? That's a familiar Christmas carol.
The holly and the ivy.
Okay.
Yeah. There are other words to it as well. But today, most people know it as the holly and the ivy. Other Christmas songs or carols that we get come from plain chant, of which there are a lot. We have King Wenceslaw, who went out on St. Stephen's Day. Actually, it was the melody came from an Eastertide thing. Tempus adeste floridum. Yeah, okay. I'm told that I also speak Latin or Spanish like a vampire. Gaudite. Gaudite, da 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 da. Stili Span did a very nice version of that. It's liturgical, it's in Latin, but everybody can sing it. And Personae Hodie, which, I don't have the English for it. It's something, on this day the earth shall ring is the English version of it, which we can play now. get this out of my way. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully carols you don't sing or hear too often now. Yes, I know it's November and some people think that Christmas starts in July. The next group of them are things that are called macaronic, which means that they have some words in one language and then they put words in another language. In this case, we have In Dulce Jubilo, which has a little bit of Latin in it, and the original of it, the rest of it was in German, because why not? One, two, three, There's also a tradition of wassailing, which was an agreement somewhat in feudal society that the peasantry could show up on the doorstep of the feudal lord and say, give us drink, give us presents, give us food at this time of year, Christmas time. And in return, the peasants would then be grateful and recognize that the feudal lord was in fact in charge and should stay that way. So it's a nice arrangement, I guess. Another thing though, this is actually probably, 1873, so well after. But the tradition goes back of bringing the Boar's Head in. The Boar's Head Carol actually started out as the entry song at Oxford for bringing the Boar's Head into the feast. And depending on which set of lyrics you hear, the Boar's Head actually winds up being compared to Christ, because having him being born now isn't enough. We have to also worry about Easter. So, but the Boar's Head Carol. Go for it.
I'll let you sit down.
It's all right.
Thank you.
for our lovely soloists.
We sang that song in high school choir.
Really?
I think at Capitol Carolyn, yeah.
Cool.
It sounded very similar, the chorus chiming in, you know.
I think it's probably traditional that someone leads and then the rest follow along, but I don't know. I like that arrangement though. All right, the last group of them are kind of depressing. Like I said, it's not enough that Jesus gets born. We have to keep track of what's going to happen later. And so they took a bunch of Easter time songs and they migrated them to Christmas. And one of them is called the Coventry Carol, which is a very pretty carol, which came out of a mystery play from, of all places, Coventry. The mystery pageants were done as cycles, and different guilds would do them. This particular piece of it was from the Annunciation to the Massacre of the Innocents, done by the Shearers and Taylors pageant. And the Coventry Carol is actually about the Massacre of the Innocents, which is what we have here. In case you're wondering, the Massacre of the Innocents is Herod finds out about Jesus and says, okay, all the children get killed. So we have Mary, Jesus, and the first martyrs. One, two, three. Okay, so caroling and the Reformation did lots of things to music. Originally we had the melody line on the bottom, and then we added stuff on top or around it, and after a while, who knows where the melody is. The original melody line, in fact, was sung by the tenor, which has absolutely nothing to do with your voice range. It comes from tenere in Latin, which means to hold. It's the line that holds the cantus firmus, the melody, and everything else is just decoration. Well, that kind of got rearranged, and the melody floated to the top, the bass floated to the bottom, and then we add some extra things. And that's become the normal way we do things, unless you're singing barbershop. And then it's the second line that has the melody, and then there's a descant above him. Oh, what's he officially? He's actually the tenor, is what they call him. The second line is the lead. The next guy's a baritone and the bass, but they're weird. So why do you put the melody at the top now as opposed to burying it? People want something that's memorable that you can sing. And the notion that everything was going to be a bunch of vocal stuff has changed as well, and you have a singer and an accompanying instrument, like, I don't know, a lute. Lutes were popular. And when you go home, you want to be able to sing things. If you think about what's in the Messiah that you actually know, you can pick the melodies out. The actual harmonics, nah, not so much. Okay, so a little interlude from all the following music through. There are instruments involved. By the way, these are recorders. Recorders have been around since forever. The characteristic, they're also called block flutes, flauta dolce, sweet flute. The characteristic thing is this bit here called the fipple. Blow here, and you have this acts as a reed to make it vibrate. They show up in a bunch of cultures. You've also got tin whistles are related, many things. Anyway, so this is a painting by Hans Memling, who was Flemish. And it was painted somewhere, well, he was born in 1440 and died in 1494, so presumably he painted it then. It's actually part of a triptych. If you look really, really hard right there, that's the left half, that's the right half, and the original has Jesus surrounded by angels singing. It's a hierarchy here. Singing was considered the thing closest to God. And then these are closer, or a little farther away, and then farther away. Okay, so who we got here? Oh, and more than likely, the painter lined up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people off the street and said, I'll give you a florin if you'll stand here wearing this costume holding this thing. Probably they didn't know how to play it. In fact, that's a good bet right there. Okay, so the instruments we have here, let's start with this one, which is a little hard to see, but it goes around and it comes up there. And similarly, that's a long straight thing, and then this one's a roundy thing. These are slide trumpets. They actually slide, you'll see that in a moment. And then this is a natural trumpet. You may also know it as a herald's trumpet. It's a long tube with a mouthpiece in one end and a bell. You blow, you can get, think bugle. The first few notes come in kind of big steps, and then you have to get way high in order to get notes close together. You solve that by changing the length of the tube. So, here we have a guy playing a slide trumpet. It's related to the sackbut, which is basically the Renaissance trombone. The difference is, if you look at a trombone, the slide has 2 connections on it that go back and forth. This thing only has 1. But it's the same general idea. Okay, so we have here one of these. It's called a shawm, and I'm probably not playing it today. Basically, it's a forerunner of an oboe. Here.
What's it called?
Shawm.
Shawm.
Shawm. S-H-A-W-M.
And I might add, there's a sham stop on many pipe organs as well.
Where's the holes? Louder than an oboe by a lot. If you go to Brittany today and go to a wedding, it's possible you'll see somebody playing one of these. It's actually called a bombard, but it's basically the same animal. They're played normally with somebody with a bagpipe, so they play in pairs, in the open, far away from people. Far from people. Yeah, there's a reason that bagpipers and bombard players walk. It's to get away from the sound. Okay, so these things are actually played together normally. And broken consort is what it's called. So here we have, that's an alto shawm. Bigger than that. And this funny thing right here is called a fontanelle. It's big enough that you can't reach the bottom hole. So they put this fishtail key on it, and the key was fragile, so it has a covering. This guy is playing something called a cornetto, which is the same name as a cornet, except it's different because it's actually kind of horn-shaped, has finger holes, but it has a mouthpiece like a modern cornet. Can't see her back there. That's a dulcian, which is a relative of a bassoon, only shorter. And this is a sackbut, and this is a slide trumpet. The cornetto, by the way, the cornetto is not made of brass, as we would normally think of it. It's actually made of wood. They come in two flavors. There's a straight one and there's a curved one. He's playing a curved one. And basically what they would do is take a piece of wood and shape it, cut it in half, carve the bore, glue the halves together, and then what makes it black is leather, and they punch holes in it. So it's actually a wooden, it's a woodwind. Woodwinds are defined as things that you change the length of the sounding thing by picking your fingers up. Brasses are things that you change the pitch by changing the length of the plumbing. So that's a woodwind. Okay, our next out of these. That one. She's playing something called a portative organ. Organs actually were like major technology at this point. And we have someone playing one, and the second instrument you'll hear in with the portative organ is a viol, a viol, or a violin. Doesn't go. Okay, go.
From that came Myron Florin and the accordion, maybe.
Yeah, that's just an early accordion.
Yeah.
Bellows.
It's bellows on the back, and then it has pipes, the way you'd expect to find in a big organ.
Now, does the keyboard resemble piano keys? It's hard to tell. They're black and white keys, for example.
I remember I have actually seen one, I never played one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not. Probably it was just
keys.
a bunch of little things. Yeah, it mechanically, you have a bellows back there, and these keys just simply open up air going into a pipe. It's kind of amazing at work given the technology and the lack of any way to seal it. But leather works well, apparently. The second instrument, as I said, was a viol, or no, oh, come on, the viol. Here's what one sounds like by itself.
bow strung, or is it just a rod?
The bow has hair on it. It's,
Does that make-
it's like a modern bow, except
Okay.
just put together differently.
Yeah, it's thin.
5, I want to say,
Okay.
but I'm not positive.
5 threads.
5.
Strings.
Oh,
5
5 strings
strings.
on the.
Yeah.
But
It's
I-
actually a
bow.
hank horsehair. Yeah, I think if I remember right, normally they have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th on the top. So I think they're a 5-stringed instrument, more than a regular violin.
Yeah, I figured it had more, but I couldn't tell how much.
And they're also constructed differently. They don't have the inner. I don't know if you know how violins put together, but the blocks and the bass bar and everything aren't there. They haven't been invented yet. It's a much simpler instrument. It doesn't involve forms, but it works pretty well. And yeah. Okay, our next one. You all know what that is.
A lyre.
Harp.
Okay.
You can call it a harp. You can call it a lyre if you want.
I wouldn't call you a lyre.
I think it tells the truth. This person, more than likely, the Renaissance version of this would have had either gut strings or natural. They had lots of critters, or brass strings. But this person's, I'm pretty sure, is steel strung, so it's brighter sounding and louder. More dance music. No, you don't. If you want other harpers, go look for the Harp Twins on YouTube. The twin girls, they both play the harp. They do interesting things. Okay, our next one. This guy. It's the iconic, let's go to the Ren Fair instrument, the lute. Comes from an instrument that was pretty much found all through northern Africa, all the way over to Persia, called an oud, or in Arabic, al-oud, the lute. The big difference between the Arabic version and this is that the Europeans stuck frets on it. They were actually tied on. They're not like the frets on a guitar that are hammered into the fretboard. These are just tied on so you can move them around.
How many strings does it have? How many strings?
It depends. The Renaissance one has 5 courses. So it has 10 strings because it's gut strung and it's kind of like nylon strings. They're quiet, and to make it louder, they doubled up the strings, just like on a modern mandolin. So these things have 5 courses. When you get to the Baroque period, they wound up with 12 courses. They're huge. Fretboard's that wide. And then they added on top of that, they added bass strings. So you have the wide fretboard plus a bunch of bass strings. Then they decided they needed lower bass, so they made the thing 8 feet long. The theorbo is a ridiculous instrument because you have the body here. Out there somewhere is where you tune the bass strings. I assume it takes 2 people. It's insane. I don't play one, so. This is a 5-course lute. The thing he's picking it with is a plectrum. The original, if you look at old how to play a lute books from the time, people wrote them. And then they had tablature as opposed to music. You put your fingers here. But the plectrum that was used was a feather, which works well. Which again comes from the Arabic tradition. The little toy picks that we have so much trouble holding on to, this is much easier. No, it just doesn't like me. There we go. Okay, so who's next? Let's go to the one on the end. That would actually be kind of hard to play it that way. You normally play it flat. It's called a psaltery. They come in different shapes. It's basically a box with strings on it. It gets its name because earlier versions of it were used to accompany psalms. And it then went on and became things like zithers, dulcimers, hammer dulcimers, cymbalons, things you bang on. But the general idea is there. And I have no idea how many strings this particular one has. one's steel strung, so it's brighter. The older ones would have been brass strung or some sort of animal strung. Just do that, get it over with. Alright, what did I do? I have no idea. Okay. I'll hopefully figure it out in a moment. Our last person, this one, like I said, I'm pretty sure that's not actually held right. That's called a tromba marina. Also a marine trumpet. Also a nun's fiddle, because apparently playing trumpets wasn't something that nuns should do, so they played one of these. The one here is Renaissance sized. They actually carried over into the Baroque period, and people wrote concertos for them. You just don't hear them very often, if ever. All right, how do I make this bigger again? Very odd. No wonder we don't hear them often.
What was that one called again?
Tromba Marina. Tromba Marina. Like
Yeah.
the place you store your boat. They come with one or two strings. If I counted right, these are later ones. If you stood them up, they're about as tall as I am. This one I think has two strings. These I think are all single string. What makes them sound the way they do is the bridge. A normal bridge on banjos, guitars, everything has 2 feet, and they sit solidly on the fretboard. And you want that because then you get a nice sound. This thing, you can't really tell, has 1 foot. So it balances on 1 foot, and when the string vibrates, the bridge wobbles. But the bridge is, the 2nd foot is just a little bit off, so it actually hits the soundboard. And it gives it that trumpet-like sound. Also, they don't have frets, and you don't actually push the string down the way you would normally do for guitars and lutes and mandolins. Instead, you actually just touch it. If you play guitar, you know that there are the harmonics you play at the top. That's how this thing works.
Does it play more than an octave? I think I only did 5 notes.
Yeah, it depends on how close together you get your fingers.
Unfortunately, our time is up. Warren Alt, thank you so very much.
We've got one piece you'd like to play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one more piece, and thank you, musicians. Thank you for coming.
Welcome, thank you.
The piece is called Flow My Tears. It's by John Dowland. It was a popular piece, and if you want to hear another version of it, again, check YouTube and look for Sting playing it on a loop. Yes, that's Sting from Dune and also The Police. Thank you.